Hello, everyone, and welcome to Lab Reports, where we live, love, lab. So today we have our second interviewee, who is Dr. Rodenas, Dr. Alma Rodenas, for people who don't go to Fordham or don't know Fordham. She is both Talia and I's advisor. And we took our freshman concepts in biology class with her. So we've known her for a very long time, and she's just been a huge part of like our Fordham science STEM career. And she is very dear to us, and we will definitely be in contact with her for the rest of our lives. And she's just like helped us out a lot with both class things and outside of class stuff like research and just like helping guide us within STEM.
Yeah, so whether you've taken her classes, you know of her, or you're not a Fordham student and you don't even know who we're talking about, Dr. Rodenas is the director of the Neuroscience department at Fordham. She teaches several classes such as neuroscience, anatomy, physiology, biology, and she also runs an undergraduate research lab that I am a part of. So she is very much involved in the Fordham community and in teaching and mentoring a lot of the students. So we thought that she'd be able to give some really great perspective, not only on what it's like to balance so many positions, but also what it's like to be in such a innovative and quickly advancing field, especially as a woman and a woman of color. So we hope you guys are able to get some insight from her interview. We're very excited to interview her. We're excited to see a different side of her too, because we've only really known her as like a mentor and as a teacher.
I'm excited to have like a more, I guess, casual conversation with her. And I mean, there's still like so much about her I don't know. So I'm hoping to gain a little bit more insight into Dr. Rodenas behind the scenes. And she also was, the reason behind this podcast even. Like, it was her idea for us to podcast together and kind of, to create this podcast. So shout out Dr. Rodenas. We really owe this all to you. And we hope you guys enjoy.
Hello, guys. We are joined with Dr. Rodenas, and today we're going to be asking her a few questions about herself, her journey to getting her PhD into her position where she's in now, and her experience as being a Latina woman in STEM. So we can just start off with a little bit about yourself. Tell us what you're studying what your research is in, and how you got to where you are now.
Wow, that's going to take hours, but okay. I'm a neuroscientist, specifically a developmental neuroscientist. So I've worked, I got my PhD in 2008. So I've been doing independent neuroscience research since then. I did my PhD at University of Miami. And then came back to New York and did my postdoctoral training at Albert Einstein. And there I worked on understanding how epigenetics through environmental input impact brain function, for instance, the development of the nervous system, but also like during ischemia, for example. And after that, I worked on understanding plasticity mechanisms in the brain, which means how does the brain either strengthen or weaken signals to mediate like memories, for example. And now here at Fordham, I'm using zebrafish as a model system to understand how the environment impacts the development of the nervous system of fish, which are very similar to our nervous system in terms of development. And Talia is one of my research students. So she's working on 2 projects, one which involves understanding how oxytocin can impact methylation of a gene that's very important for the inhibitory excitatory balance in the brain. And the other one is really just understanding how toxins in the environment can impact development of the nervous system. How I got here, it's like a long road, but I got my undergraduate degree at City College of New York, right here up the road. That's after me arriving in New York when I was 15 years old. And after City College, I just had to work. I needed money, so I went to work. But like in the back of my mind, I always had this thing like, I'm not done. I'm not done. I have to do, get my master's something. And for personal reasons, I had to move. And I used that opportunity to kind of like get out of my comfort zone and my great job with my great friends to push me to like go to graduate school to get a master's. So I thought, I'm gonna get a master's to get a better job. I was working full time, and part of that master's involved doing work in a lab, and I ended up in a neurobiology lab, and I fell in love with neuroscience research. I just like absolutely did not want to leave the lab, and then so that was like, I have to get a PhD. And that's what I did. I got my PhD at the Miami Project to Cure Paralysis, which is a hub for like understanding how spinal cord injury impedes axon growth and what methods to try and help people who are paralyzed.
Awesome.
Is that good enough for you?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Great detail. I mean, you kind of said like why neuroscience, but why science in general? Like, do you remember a moment in your life where you were like, okay, like I'm very interested in science, I'm good at it, and like I know this is kind of what I want to do in my future?
Yeah, I mean, I always, like I said, had this thought that there's got to be a purpose to me. Does that make sense? Like I needed a purpose. I was working, I was doing stuff, but there wasn't a purpose. And so I just think accidentally, by trying to achieve a step further, I just put myself in a position that surrounded me with like science. And I had never done research before. I never had that opportunity at City College at all. So when I worked into a research lab, I was a little worried, scared. I had been out of school for a long time, so that gap kind of messes with your brain. But I was working on in a lab also that worked with neurons from the spinal cord that are co-cultured with these cells called Schwann cells that are important for myelination so that neuron can conduct signals super fast. And one of my jobs initially was to take some of these cells and label some proteins that we thought were super important for this process to happen. Neurofibromatosis 2 protein, and I did it the first try. I was like floored. I'm like, I remember.
That's pretty intense.
I remember being in the dark room when you've been in the microscope when you're looking at, you know, your results, and all of a sudden I see all these beautiful green fluorescent proteins in my Schwann cells, and it was like that moment where like sparks flew, and I was like, I want to feel this over and over again. Of course, the reality is science is full of those moments, but also requires a lot of resilience because you have moments where things don't work out and you have to really become a good troubleshooter to figure out why isn't this working out, and not doing the same thing over and over, but really strategizing to think, how can I change this experiment to reveal the true data type of thing. And Talia will tell you she's very persistent and good at this, and she has really rocked in generating some important data. So yeah, that was the moment.
Okay.
Yeah, that's awesome. So in your time at Fordham, you've mentored and taught so many students, including ourselves. Is there any key thing you hope that your students take away from their mentorship or learning from you?
Yes, I want students to really understand that they have to believe in themselves, that anything you want to do is possible. The only ones that can put barriers in front of you is yourself. There in life, you're surrounded by other people trying to put barriers, but they should mean nothing. There are times when you're going to fail, but that also means nothing. Failing is part of growth. And I know this all sounds cliche, but the reality is you have to believe in yourself and find people who believe in you. Find mentors. No, don't be afraid to approach faculty who sometimes can become like guides for you, and that's what I hope to do with my students. I want to be, reach a hand out and give them opportunities, small opportunities, big opportunities, whatever it can be, advice, so that, the goal, I believe, for every student should be to reach your full potential, no matter what career choice you have. But sometimes it's hard to do that without guidance. And sometimes it's hard to do that when, if you fail, you don't understand that that part is going to take you to finding your best potential. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I want my students to succeed by creating within themselves pathways that, like, no matter what comes in front of you, you're just going to look over that, you put your head down, and you keep on doing the work, and eventually you'll get to where, it could take you as long as it took me. Eventually you'll land where you're supposed to be.
At Fordham, you have like a lot of different roles. You're an advisor, you're our advisor, you've been our professor, and you're the head of the neuroscience department. And, you've been a great advisor to us, a great professor to us, albeit sometimes very tough. But how is it like balancing all of those roles, and also balancing like the relationships between your advisees and then your students and then people in your lab and things like that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So as the director of the Integrative Neuroscience program, I come across a lot of students, often in a very administrative capacity now. You guys are my advisees, so it was sort of my job to have you here all the time. And I believe firmly that enabled me to serve you better. More contacts means me getting to know you better, but most importantly, you feeling comfortable enough to reach out to me. And then I have the students in the classroom, and you've both been students in my class. And I heard you say several times how tough I am. But the reality is that I firmly believe that college should not be easy, that you need to be challenged, and you need people to challenge you in the right way, to challenge you in a way that they want you to succeed and learn. But you still have to really push yourself to some limits. And so because of that environment, often I find that some students are intimidated by me, so I do my best to reach out outside of class to kind of let them know that I'm just a little person. I'm just a human being. We're all human beings that can interact with each other, and I just happen to have this role. And so once a student comes into my lab, it becomes a little bit of a different story, because then I'm totally immersed in your well-being. So I think of my students in the lab like my kids. I already have kids who are in college, but I transfer that, and I'm just as honest with them as I am with my kids, because I think sometimes you need to hear the things that other people won't tell you. But also, if you're not doing great, that's just part of life, and I just push you to do better type of thing. Mm-hmm. So I think definitely there's different dynamics depending on how I encountered you. But my goal is to hopefully at some point have students understand that my door is open, because I want them to succeed.
There's one more question I think is really important to discuss, considering the fact that one of the goals of this podcast is to reach out to communities that may not be represented as much in STEM, including women, people of color, people of different sexual orientations or gender orientations. So having guests who can speak to their experiences and provide any insight as someone who made it is really important to us. So we wanted to also give you the opportunity, if you have any advice for someone who may identify from an underrepresented community in science, to kind of reach out and speak back to them.
Sure. I can totally speak to that, because I feel I can fill in any one of those spots. That means underrepresented. I'm Latina, I'm an immigrant, I'm queer. When I first got here, I was, in what you call low socioeconomic status, etc. And so for me, having lived those experiences in every one of these ways has really informed me in terms of who I want to be as an adult. And part of that forming is because I really had, not early on in my life, but later on when I was now in my PhD and as a postdoc, mentors who were also BIPOC, people of color, who uplifted me and gave me as a mission, passing on this thing that, you can't just put yourself in a little hole and not look at the world around you, but you have to be able to reach out to people. And I think reaching out in some ways can be very simple, because one of the things that happens when you first come into college is that you have this level of uncertainty, and showing young people that they can achieve things and giving them opportunities to prove themselves, I think is very important for me. So I really do try to reach out to people who I know are underrepresented in science, for example, to give them an idea of what representation means and give them like hands-on experiences that makes them realize, like, I can do this. Maybe I'll choose not to, but I can. And that's very empowering. And I think, what you guys are doing is very important as women in science. You're sort of taking on this mantle that I feel that's so important to me in having this program, because you're reaching out to your peers and having them get a certain level of comfort that's necessary for you to dare to take steps that as a underrepresented person, you often don't. Like, you can stay on the side because there's a lot of fear in taking action, but if you have people like you giving examples, providing insight, etc. So I absolutely love that you're doing this. I think it's a huge step that helps liberate somebody who could be like fantastic and achieve a lot given the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, you really have helped me with that, especially, I came to Fordham pretty low confidence, and you definitely helped me truly believe that, like, if I put my mind to something, that I can succeed in it, and, like, even if I don't do super well in a class, like, it's not the end of the world. And yeah, you've really instilled a lot of confidence in me,
and look how awesome you are.
Thank you. So yeah, and you were the idea behind this whole podcast, so we really owe a lot to you. Thank you, Dr. Rodenas.
Thank you, guys. I really love what you're doing. Thank you.
Yeah, we really appreciate having you here, and we hope you guys are able to gain a lot of insight and inspiration from this interview. Do you have anything you'd like to plug to our viewers? Anything you want to give a highlight to or announce?
Sure. Let's see. I'm like a little science nerd, so I do a lot of stuff in the lab, but I also know that life is not just about science. So one of the things I'm doing right now is I'm part of this migrant initiative at Fordham, and we have a lot of opportunities going out there to young people to do internships and stuff. So if you see announcements, even if you're in science, go for it.
Great, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yes, and with that, we'll end this interview. So we'll see you guys next week. Bye.
What is your go-to activity when you need a break from academia?
Wow, that's a great question, which I often do need a break from academia, Sometimes I get trapped in this little world. So definitely I need to leave campus. I often like to walk through Central Park a lot. If I can't leave campus, you want me to completely be honest with you?
Yeah.
I come in my office, I close the door, and I go to my kids' Insta account to know what they're doing. So I can be a little happy. That's just my phase right now when I'm missing my kids, and I go through their Instas to see what they're up to. And sometimes I'll just go and get a cup of coffee because I'm a little bit of a coffee addict, so I'll go and get a cup of coffee.
Nice.
Very important.
That's a great answer.
Yeah.